When a group of hikers stumbled upon this hidden tomb during one of their mountain climbs, they couldn't believe their luck. The entrance to the tomb was hidden behind a large surrounding building stone, and the hikers had to make an effort to push that stone aside so that they could enter the tomb. But when they entered the tomb, their excitement turned to horror. The tomb was dark and damp, and the air was heavy with the smell of rot. In the flickering light of their flashlights, the hikers, Emma, her husband Chris, and their friend Tommy, could clearly see that it had been built by humans. The passageway seemed endless, and they had to use their headlamps to navigate the darkness. But suddenly, everything became very strange. Chris and Tommy's eyes were shining with curiosity, fixed on the closed door ahead. Emma, on the other hand, was indecisive and fearful, begging to turn back. Emma found herself in the middle, torn between her own fears and the group's determination to unravel the mystery behind the door. They were at a crossroads: leave and live with the regret of not knowing, or move on and face the unknown. With a feeling of adventure and curiosity, Emma finally relented and agreed to continue exploring. The men were relieved, as they were too curious to leave at once. Armed with a heavy stone, Tommy tried his luck unlocking the mysterious door, hoping to discover the secrets hidden behind it. Tommy used all his strength and hit the lock with the stone as hard as he could. I expected it to break after the first hit, but it didn't. He didn't give up and continued kicking the lock a few more times, but to his disappointment, nothing happened. Frustration grew as the heavy stone failed to break the stubborn lock. "Any other brilliant ideas?" Emma murmured, looking at the door skeptically. Chris and Tommy exchanged glances, determined not to give up. "Maybe there's another way in," Chris suggested, eager for the group to keep moving forward. After a while, they had exhausted all other options and had only one last resort left: kicking down the door. The three of them looked at each other and decided to give it a try. They were very curious about what they would find behind the door. Tommy took a few deep breaths as he plucked up the courage for his next task. He stood in front of the door, concentrating on his breathing, and unloaded a hard kick over the door. The sound echoed through the hallway, causing his companions to be startled. Then, everyone looked at the door with wide eyes. The door creaked as it slowly opened, making a loud, horrible creaking noise. It had been many, many years since it had been opened. The trio held their breath and realized they couldn't go back. They had to walk through the door and see what was waiting for them inside. Upon entering the old passageway, the air became damp and musty. The walls were lined with mysterious symbols and strange hieroglyphics. Chris, Tommy, and Emma exchanged excited glances, wondering where this mysterious passageway might lead. One thing was for sure: it promised to be an adventure they would never forget. As they advanced, Emma's doubts began to assail her. Darkness was approaching, and the passage seemed to have no end. But Chris and Tommy's determination kept them going. They couldn't go back now, not when they were so close to discovering the secrets of the ancient passageway. Chris and Tommy's determination did not waver, despite Emma's protests that they turn around. Soon, Emma's cry pierced the eerie silence of the old passage, and the trio stumbled upon something that took their breath away. Everyone turned pale when they realized what they were seeing. They had been walking for so long and had been so focused on the road, making sure they didn't fall, that they hadn't paid attention to their surroundings. Now, they were in an open space, surrounded by skeletons. Wherever they looked, they saw piles of bones. As they surveyed the space, they noticed something about the skeletons. It seemed as if everyone was arranged in a large circle, with a skeleton in the center. When they approached the skeleton in the center, they noticed something strange. They saw something shiny in his hands. He was holding a mystery box. Upon closer look, they saw that the box was completely covered with some sort of inscription. The three hikers were very curious to see what he had written on the box, but the skeleton's hand covered it almost completely. Chris and Tommy were discussing what would be the easiest way to get the box out of the skeleton's clutches when they heard a faint crack coming from the darkness. Everyone stood still, with the possible scenarios unfolding in their minds. Was there anyone with them? Tommy and Chris quickly turned on their lights around the camera and were relieved to see that it had only been a few leaves blown by the wind. They wanted to continue, but Emma began to scream, tears streaming down her cheeks. Chris felt a twinge of guilt at seeing Emma so scared. He tried to reassure her that they were all in this together. I knew this was all a little creepy, but they had come this far, and I couldn't let the opportunity slip away. Tommy nodded. If Chris was honest with himself, he couldn't shake the feeling that they shouldn't be here. But I wasn't going to tell the others. If Emma knew he felt that way, she would never agree to stay. And the mystery of the box was too big to ignore, so Chris didn't want to give up. Emma begged them to put down the box and go home, but Chris and Tommy were determined to uncover the secrets it contained. In the end, Emma agreed to stay, but she wasn't going to help them. He didn't want to touch any skeletons or get close to them. Emma waited outside the circle of skeletons while Chris and Tommy cautiously approached the skeleton in the center again. They were both scared, but their curiosity was far greater than their fear. When they saw the skeleton up close, they got goosebumps and felt chills. The two boys disliked being inside the circle, so they decided to do it quickly. Tommy's hands trembled as he picked up the box, and he felt a cold sweat on his forehead. Chris carefully separated the skeleton's fingers, and with one last tug, Tommy ripped the box from the skeleton's claws, echoing the crack of bones in the old chamber. When the three looked at the inscriptions on the box, they concluded that it must be a foreign, possibly ancient language. They could have been staring at her for hours, but they thought they wouldn't have learned anything. But they desperately wanted to know what the signs meant, and even more so what was inside the box. They took turns holding the box, inspecting it closely, and figuring out how to open it. It seemed impossible. Emma let herself be carried away by emotion and forgot her fear for a moment. He loved puzzles, so this was his task. I was determined to find a way to open it. Upon closer look, Emma discovered that the box was actually a puzzle, and that the inscriptions on the box were patterns and symbols waiting to be solved. His eyes flashed with determination and curiosity as he traced the signs with his fingers, imagining what he would find inside. He took a deep breath and accepted the challenge. Emma was engrossed in solving the puzzle, and everything else was fading away. His mind churned as he studied the symbols and patterns, looking for connections in the carvings. Each spin of the symbols contained a clue, a piece of the puzzle waiting to be deciphered. I felt like I had almost figured it out, and then, as he put the last piece in its place, he held his breath. Suddenly, he heard a soft click inside the box. He had succeeded. He lifted the lid carefully and revealed the contents they had been waiting for. His eyes widened in disbelief as he looked inside. "Come on, Emma. What's inside? Show us," Chris and Tommy said, but Emma remained silent, considering her options. I could close the box and tell them it was empty, but if I showed it to them, they would stay here a while longer, she was sure. He decided to show it to him. They had already come so far, and I couldn't deny that I was curious to know where the contents of the box would take them. You see, inside the box was a very special object. Emma picked it up and held it up to show it to the others. Chris and Tommy gasped when she showed it to them. It was a key. golden, shiny, and beautifully made, with lots of intricate detail.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
They didn't know what it was for, but there must have been something inside the tomb, right? Emma agreed and asked them where they wanted to start looking first. Chris and Tommy were surprised by his change in attitude, but were excited to continue their search. They decided to start searching the chamber with the circle of skeletons first. They didn't know what exactly they were looking for, but they kept their eyes open for anything that could be opened with a key. A door, some kind of safe, another box. After another hour, they still hadn't found anything. They were almost starting to lose hope and ready to go home when Chris shouted, "Guys, over here! I found something!" Emma and Tommy ran to him and were shocked when they saw what he had found. This couldn't be real. Chris had found a secret opening to another room. He had been checking a wall and, accidentally pushing a stone, heard the stone door open. As it opened, a bright light shone through the opening. What would they find on the other side? As they walked through the door, they couldn't hide their amazement. They did not expect to encounter something like this in their entire lives, and even less today. Questions crowded in their minds. How was that possible? Did anyone else know? Should they call the police? They had entered a beautiful room, filled with shiny statues and treasures. From necklaces and bracelets to colored gems and coins, it was absolutely stunning. Their eyes danced around the room as they contemplated everything. Then they noticed something that was perhaps even more special. They discovered many artifacts and manuscripts, strange maps and sculptures. The trio couldn't believe what they were seeing. They were aware of the many secrets that this room held, amazed by the knowledge and stories of the past that each of the objects hid. What a special discovery! But they still had one thing to do. They had yet to figure out what the key to the mystery box could be used for. They looked around the room for a while and saw a few large boxes in which they could try it out, when suddenly they were interrupted. They heard something in the distance. It sounded like voices whispering. They all looked at each other in amazement, terror. There was definitely someone else inside. But who else could know this place? They didn't have much time to think about possible explanations because moments later, something else happened. A loud boom began to resound throughout the room. What was going on? As suddenly as the noise had started, it now stopped. The trio was completely silent, afraid to move. They had to do something. But what? Everyone was terrified and wanted to get out of that place alive. They had to come up with a plan, and they had to do it fast. They stood still for a minute when Tommy whispered, "What was that? We have to go and see."